Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
The assignment called Metamorphosis of Form is an excellent assignment built by Professor A.G. Rao. Professor A.G. Rao was my teacher, and he had this wonderful assignment which as a student I did in 1988, where I made in 5 steps from E to elephant. So this is a fabulous assignment because here the students learn form transition, they learn radial manipulation, they learn volumes of form, and also they learn evolution of form. So it's a wonderful assignment. Well, all the things are combined together. So here the students actually start with the alphabet. I tell them that don't be very creative with the alphabet, have a simple 3-dimensional Helvetica alphabet, and from the alphabet they first have to build that 3D model using equal amount of clay. So you take 5 lumps of clay. So first lump of clay you make the alphabet, and the last lump of clay you make the animal, and then you actually make the center 3 parts, and each of these stages have to be equal. That is the form transition from E to the next stage has to be equal, from that stage to the middle stage has to be equal, from there here, and then the last stage. So what happens is students actually move a little bit. In case there's a little big gap between the 4th and the 5th one, the student has to make it move closer to the 3rd step. So that actually ups and downs, discussion with the students is actually the learning outcome of this metamorphosis assignment, and it's a wonderful starting assignment for students who are learning form and aesthetics.
So the first assignment we had was metamorphosis. So we start by taking equal volumes of clay, 5 parts of equal clays, and we had to transform a letter into an animal. So I chose snail from S. It was the main part was deciding how it grows and how the form transforms into an animal. Like we can see, S is a very simplified structure with just 2 curves. But whereas as it gets more complex, as it becomes a snail, there is the whole shell and the ears and eyes that come out. So the main thing that I had to focus on was the consistency in the change, and the jumps should be uniform. So I started by I made the S first, and I made the final snail first, and then I tried to make the middle part first, and then I tried to establish the jumps in between the 2nd and the 4th stage. And I understood the importance of small changes that we make. For example, adding a small curve here or a small tapering end that shows the eyes. So a little change in the curve or a little extra bend goes a long way, and it shows how a form is converting and changing and transforming.
So we took a letter, that is, I took S, and we converted it to an animal, that is swan. So what we did was we took a big lump of clay and then we divided it into 5 equal parts for the 5 stages of the metamorphosis. And without reducing the volume, we kept the volume intact, and we changed the form of the, we gradually changed the form of the letter. So I did the assignment first, and then what happened was that it was too refined, and the volume change can be seen suddenly. So I have to redo that in such a way that volume change cannot be felt. So we finalized this exploration, and then this was all about metamorphosis, and we could study how the form evolves, and the constant flow comes when the volumes are intact.
So metamorphosis, alphabet to animal. It was about learning smooth transition from one form into another. We had to use clay and had to depict a controlled transition, and we had to do it in 5 steps. So I chose B for bat, and getting an Helvetica font and turning B into bat. First of all, we had to create an alphabet of Helvetica font. Then, furthermore, we had to create a detailed bat. Then we had to make a form in between which depicts the alphabet and has some characteristics of your final animal. So these are my 5 steps.
So here we had to convert an alphabet, a Helvetica alphabet R, to was to be transformed into an animal, that is the rabbit. So R for rabbit. Then this transformation was to be achieved in 5 stages. That is so that the amount of transition between each step should be equal. So what I did is, first I made the first stage, the final stage, and then I made the middle stage, that is the third step. Then I made the second step and the fourth step. So after doing that, what I did is I started adding small details in each step, so that to reduce the gap of the transition or the amount of transition between each step. So as you can see, the ears are popping up between in the second step, and the backside of the R is getting bigger, and a bit of it is becoming narrow, so that it just broke down in the third step, and then it completely converted into ears, and his back got fully covered. Then what are the learnings and difficulties in the process? So basically it's a Bombay clay. So the first difficulty was quick drying of the clay. As you can see, our models were constantly, they were breaking, and we were continuously sticking them up again and again. The brittle nature of the clay. Then there was we had to maintain the exact volume of the clay in each step. So we just made equal volumes of clay balls, and we had to make the models in that only.
So metamorphosis is just transforming of one form into another. So something important about it was, which we learned about it, was to keeping a same amount of interval between each, and following the same volume around every 5 models. So here I took a Helvetica O as a letter and changed it to a form of owl. So I started by creating the detailed image and trying to make each individually as like so after making the detailed image, I started creating small intervals in between. So another part was bringing like small details which helps in the meaning of the overall form, which helps in the continuity of the whole form.
So first one is metamorphosis. Here, the task was quite difficult for me because I took letter C and I had to convert it to a crab. And the first thing which was coming in my mind was, how should I take a y-axis plane or x-axis plane for my animal? Like you can see over here. The task was to take either this, like this, or to keep it in a y-axis plane. So I chose a difficult one, which kind of was difficult actually. So what I did, first I made the first step, that is the C one, okay, the Helvetica C. Then I made the last step, the final step, a perfect detailed version of the crab. Then I made the third step, which was kind of the middle of it, where the C was compressed and made this little form. And then it was turned to the final product, final crab. Then yeah, this is the detailed version of the crab. You can see over there and in the photo also.
Then opposite one. In this case, I took the alphabet P and turned it into a peacock. As you can see, like the transformation is achieved in 5 steps, such that the transition between the each step should be equal. The first and the final steps being the letter and animal respectively. Later on, the small details were added to reduce the jump in the transition between each steps.
So here the students had to abstract one expression of the animal and they had to choose an animal of their choice. We had to do this assignment very quick because we had to finish this in 3 days time, and hence we said let us now look at what is available online. The students went to this very nice site called Super Coloring, where you had templates of animal sort of drawings where they could just cut and then they can fold and they can build these wonderful animals what we see around. There's an interesting learning in this. When the students actually started building this animal forms, it was already an abstract form using facets. So you see these wonderful small facets. We found out that when the students build these sort of abstract animals out of this paper form using facets, the expression which was there in these animals and reptiles were actually more powerful. Here, for example, in the snake case, the hood, for example, is actually more powerful. The body is small, and the most powerful element in the snake actually is its hood and its attack. So this, this whole thing was shown much more effectively in the abstract. So this actually triggered us to then look at one expression in each animal form. So now, like after making these animal forms, and once we decided that we could look at one expression, either which is there in this abstract form or in the abstract form I want the student to make, we then planned that we will come up with one strong expression in each case. Then what I did was, I wanted the students to use a different type of abstraction. So they had to use flat planes to build the abstraction. So that was the constraint given to them. And each of them chose one expression. So we'll start from Akanksha.
So I wanted to focus on the reaching out factor in the giraffe.
So she focused out on the reaching out. So she'll only show how the giraffe can reach out to the tallest of the branches in the forest.
I focused on the speedy leap of the horse.
So this is wonderful. Here in this case, the horse is quite relaxed in this sort of animal form, but he chose to show the leap of the horse, like leaping and moving forward.
I focused on the furious attack by the horns of a bull.
So that's very interesting. So this also is the furious attack, and he also wanted to do the furious attack of the bull.
Yeah, so in this, it's shown the ferociousness of the snake, but in the final version, I've made the slithering of the snake.
So the movements, the snake, the movement should be shown in the sculpture. What was yours?
I tried to depict the pride of the lion.
That's wonderful. Actually, this lion also is very, beautiful, and that pride is seen quite nicely here. So we'll see how well you will do the job.
So mine was the elegance of the deer.
Yeah, I think it's looking elegant, right? It's still looking elegant, but we'll see how much more elegance you can make. So after this finalization of what expressions their animals will show, the students had to quickly work with paper. So they actually took paper and made very quick, rough and dirty, models. And an interesting situation came up over here. As soon as the student turned the horns horizontal of the bull actually became more ferocious. So here we are seeing that the bullness of the bull is not there, whereas the aggression of the bull is captured. So we were saying that how we can remove the animal from the sculpture and only have the expression. Similarly, then we had this wonderful giraffe here. Look at the paper model. The body of the giraffe was not important. The reaching out of the giraffe to the heights in the forest was very important. And then finally, when it further refinement of the giraffe is how the whole reaching out is happening, and we see that the giraffeness has now reduced to hardly 10%, whereas in this still there is some 30% giraffeness. So that is the whole beauty way of understanding sculpture in a very interesting way of how we can change various aspects. So similarly, for example, look at this various aspects of how this elegance of the like deer was captured. This student very quickly made this wonderful sort of curvature sort of paper model. From this paper model, he quickly built this final model of his elegant deer, and I can say that it's reached around 20% of the deer and 80% of the elegance and the grace with which the deer moves. So that is the aspect which is captured. So that's how we could actually, within a short span of 3 days, we could build all these models and everything. And extremely grateful to all the team in IIT Hyderabad, the support team, Akanksha, my teaching assistant, who's been supporting us on the innovation studio activity. We have Vivek and Jagdish from our wood studio who helped with all the sculpture making, and of course Darshan from the lab where laser cutting was done. So we worked as a team, so that's how the students could get very quick sort of resources, and because of that we could finish this assignment very quickly.
And then we had this animal abstraction assignment where we took an animal. I took this one itself. So we made a paper abstract form, the 3D paper craft. And this was like, we had this plain faces, but still it was a little more abstracted from the original animal or the original picture. So that was the first form of abstraction where we had like around 90% of the real form intact, and we changed 10% to abstract. And then 3D animal with ivory sheets, which has volume, was made, but out of plain faces. So the next part was we had to make it with complete planes. So that was the constraint we had, and we started sketching. So my explorations were like the emotion I had to bring from the assignment, the swan, was that elegance or gracefulness of the swan. So I started sketching the curves of the neck, the part which I gave importance to, which is the elegant neck, the curves and all. So we sketched it, and we had a very rough model. So that was this model, and it was actually, it can be understood that it's a swan, but I just took the outline of the swan and I made the prototype, the small one, the rough one. After that, we thought that we have to bring in the movement to the model. So what we did is that we cut this part into two halves so that the neck part comes first and the body part comes the next. So we came up with another form, that is this one. So yeah, so the neck, we had two parts now, and I kept the neck part inside so that the movement of the swan can be seen as well as the elegance with the curves. And but what was the problem with this was the neck was too bent so that it can be understood it was a swan. So we have to abstract it. That was the whole idea of the assignment. And we chopped off the neck and we came up with this model. So the curves shows the elegance, and we have chopped neck and which also is very curved. It has a curvy nature. And then we gave a hinge here, like we gave a nut here. So we connected it here. And that also added up to the form, to be honest. Like it showed the movement, it enhanced the movement, and also it was going well with the form itself. So the cardboard model of the final one, and abstracting further by chopping the head. And then we did the laser cutting. So we had this 3 mm hard cardboards, and then we did laser cutting, and then we got these pieces separately. So after that, we assembled the laser cut parts using bolt washers and nuts with a pre-decided space in between them. So where we face the problem of what will be the space that will be given inside. So we gave one nut space here in between neck and the body, and two nut space in between the swan. So what happened is that, and we stick this part. So what happened is that even the spaces is having a constant flow. So that also adds up to the adds with the elegance. So we did our assembly part as such, and then the circular pieces were attached to these two sides at the head and the tail of the bolt, and then it hided the screw which we used, and also it added up to the form. So that was our assignment for abstraction of animals. And yeah, these are the final pictures I took with this final abstract form, and it was how it went with the from small paper paper scratch work to the big final form abstraction. Yeah, thank you.
Very good. I think the breakthrough, what was your, what is your sentence for this? What do you call it? The main attribute.
It was the gracefulness and the elegance of this one.
So in sentence, you can call it graceful swan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that you like to really target it. So, and it has that type of grace, right? That coolness, that calmness, that gracefulness is there, and it feels as if it's gliding through the waters. So very good. Excellent. And all of you did notice how, by she had the earlier image. So the earlier image, she had this whole thing like the swan. Just by chopping off that whole curvature and keeping it straight, the grace is further improved. Look at the first picture, and and then it's become more abstract, and that abstractness is actually helping it to take it away from the swanness as much as we can. So, how much do we give this percentage according to you? Is it 30% swan or 50% swan?
It's like 35 or yeah.
What about you? What do you feel? 30%. Okay, good. I think if you have been 30 to 10, it's quite nice. So all the best.
The next assignment was the abstraction of an animal. So we started by making a low poly model from paper of the animal. I chose giraffe. And I had to analyze the form of a giraffe. So a giraffe is basically, it's tall, tawny, with long legs and long neck. So I had to focus on how what part of giraffe, what element of giraffe I wanted to capture. So by doing this assignment, I had a better understanding of how it got converted from 2D to 3D. We took templates and folded them to make into a 3D form. And how organic structure of the giraffe, the curves of the giraffe were converting into a geometric part. I could understand the volume of the giraffe, the proportion of the giraffe, like how the body, how the lens are proportionate to the neck, the face, the ears and the eyes, and the tail at the back, and the whole volume. So by doing this assignment, I understood the proportions of the animal and converting it into simplifying it more and yet containing the emotion that the giraffe has to express. I started by making some rough sketches to understand the important lines, the important forms and shapes that the giraffe should capture. So the main thing was it should be towering, slender, and lofty. We started by making quick paper models. This was the most fun part because we didn't have to waste time thinking, but we had to actually start implementing on what we were doing. Sir just told us to take bits of paper and put whatever we were thinking into action. And I think that was the best part of doing this first course, was to understand whatever we want to communicate. We had to communicate it through different types of forms. Where we understood it. Even I started by making this paper model by just 3 bits of papers and attaching them together. How just attaching them with minimal effort and trying to convert a complex structure into a very minimal form, which still represents what the giraffe stands for, like elongated and tallness. So initially I started with 4 legs, but I didn't feel that it was necessary. Even 2 legs conveyed what I was trying to say. So the whole concept of abstraction was to take as minimal effort and lower the percentage of the exactness and the originalness of the animal, and just to bring out the emotion that we intend to. I also explored the wire material. I initially planned to have planes like here, circular discs I wanted to show the long neck of the neck, but I understood by doing this that the wire is not working for my form. What I want to express, the sleekness, the wire was not supporting and enhancing that. So I had to skip that and I switched to cardboards. So these are the different forms that I tried from cardboard. We can see here that even changing the tilt, changing the angle, having a little cut here makes a huge difference. It changes the whole, when we look at the form together, it changes the whole aspect of the form. So I started by making cardboard models, and this was the piece that I ended up concluding on. I understood that even if you see the difference between two, they're almost the same. But by making this small cut, I enhanced the reaching out element that the giraffe is supposed to express. Then we switched to the final model where we had to laser cut, and we made laser cut drawings, and this is the establishment final. After all this, the main thing I want to convey was the reaching out of the giraffe. The model is I have kept it sleek with less volume, and there are minimal joints that are not protruding outwards. It's very plain and sleek from the outside, and it's very slender also. So it horizontally, it's not that wide, so it enhances the fact of the height. We can focus on the height and the stretching out. And I have kept the edges sharp because blunting them will reduce the stretching out part that I wanted to express. We were also taught about how there are different, we can take a small element and have different behaviors to it. Like a same element can be shown as hard or soft. So by reducing the amount of curves, having some straight lines, minimal curves, less organic structures, and more sharp joints, I try to bring this form together. And also, while making the model, I understood how I had to focus on how it will stand. I had to understand the center of mass. If the height was there, I had to understand how much broadness I should keep so it balances and doesn't fall forward.
This is animal abstract form. So using templates from a website called Super Coloring, we had to create paper crafts animals, but in geometric abstraction. So while creating each animal, it had an highlighted emotion in itself. And even if it was geometrically abstract, the shape and the form of the animal was distinct enough to make out what the emotion was. So the most challenging part was to figure out the complex folds and the order of them to minimize the structural complexity while joining the paper crafts and its parts. So I chose bull as my abstract animal, and his nature and emotion was of a charging and furious one. So his horns were horizontal, not in a vertical way, showing elegance. So this is my animal that I created from geometric abstraction. Further moving into process. So animal abstraction, we had to create a fully abstract depicting only emotion in it. So further taking my bull into abstraction, I created the emotion of furious attack by his horns, and these are my first paper doodles, you can say, which I created while depicting the emotion. So as you can see, my horns are in horizontal position to depict the furious nature of the horns and the attacking style of the bull. So these are actually the steps from which I have gone. So first one was the paper doodle, which was actually very small in size. So this is my first doodle about my bull. So as you can see, it is really small right now, and it needed a lot of improvement due to the bullness that you can see it has still in it. So furthermore, moving into process, I created the larger form of it, which is like minimizing the elements which I had added in the paper doodle. The horns were slightly tilted downwards to show more furiousness, but further moving into process, I figured out that the horizontal one would depict like a moderate amount and the bullness would be reduced down. So after this, we had to do laser cutting in MDF sheet and had to do an structure from it. So the main complexity behind doing this was we had to only use plates and we had to intersect them. We can't fold them. So this was the first laser cutting that I did, and as you can see, the behind elements are a little smaller. Then the horns are a little tilted inward. So this was the first. Actually, it was an first experiment doing how we can depict more furiousness in this bull. So further moving into process, I did this by increasing the behind elements. It shows like it's attacking forward, the furiousness towards forward, and the horns were a little tilted inwards to show the straightness of them. So these were my explorations for the course.
Then the paper animal formed. So this was the process. Like first we had to choose an animal. So I chose lion. Then we had to choose an attribute of the animal. So I chose the pride. So the lion's pride. We got our templates of the animals from a website called Super Coloring, and we downloaded the templates. We printed them out on TK sheets, and we just cutted them out individually, and then we tried to stick them together to form the animals. So basically, this faceted form of animals, it was highlighting its attributes more than the actual form of the animal itself. So one thing which I found very interesting was we had our individual, all the templates in our hands, and we were just wondering like how it will come out eventually. So also, as you can see, we can see a very interesting form inside the animal. So this was my final faceted form of lion. Again, learnings and difficulties in the process. So the first thing was I had to choose posture of the lion which shows its pride. Then it was more difficult to stick the folded pieces of paper than just a normal piece of paper. Then we had to maintain the neatness of the whole model because that's the most basic and I think the most toughest aspect of any model making. Then comes the animal abstraction. So this is just the second part after the paper animal abstraction. So we had to use the same attribute of the animal, but it was to be depicted in a more abstract form. That in this one, we had to make it in such a way that the animal should be visible the least. Then we made, so the process was first we made quick explorations in paper, then in cardboard, and then we finally 3D laser cutted it on the MDF sheets and we just pasted it together. So these were the first quick explorations in the paper. The one on the extreme left was my first exploration. So we had to use plates for creating the abstract form. So I tried to arrange them in various interlockings. In the second one, I used a spine, and then I tried to connect them together. And this was the third one. Then comes the exploration in cardboard, where I tried to create a kind of confusion that for some people this form looks like a leg, but for some people it's the lion's fur. So these are the final 3D laser cutted form of MDF sheets, and we just made out of it. Then this time the lion's pride was not to be just depicted by its form, but it was not by its only the posture, but it was also we had to show it in its form. So the attributes that was to be conveyed in such a way that, as I already said, that it should be visible, the animal should be least visible. Then we just learned that the changing the material for the mockups also required us to change its joinery and its joining medium. As you can see, for building the cardboards, I need to use paper tapes, I used stapler pins, I used Fevicol, I used everything, ranging from foam to thermocol.
And later we did the animal abstraction assignment. So we were used to asked to create an abstract image, which we did by using like template we downloaded from an website, and to create a form. So here I took like a deer as an animal, and so the main attributes which I taken was elegant, and here the material we used was TK sheets, and even in the form, this particular form of which is usually mainly of straight lines, the curvature and the emotions of the deer are still visible in the form, and later making it more abstract. So here I still for this I took the attributes like as gracefully, elegance, calm, modest, etc. And these were my some of the exploration, and trying out with line justice helped me more with the assignment for further progress. And after picking a element and tried to make it a paper model. So these are my two other paper models, and we later made into a cardboard model. So this was my final product after picking the paper model into a cardboard model. So here we took like laser cutting machines to cutting using cardboard sheets and to make into like a final model. So while making it in a cardboard, we learned more about like how to place things, like how to join things. Like here, I took the same material, cardboard, to make slits, to place it and join together. So this was my final lesson.
Yeah, then comes animal forms. Here I chose the animal snake, which had two properties, from my opinion, which was the ferociousness of that animal and the slithering movement of that animal. So what I took was ferociousness, and I made this paper model. Here, the hood of the snake literally depicts the ferociousness. Compared to its body, the hood is very big, and this is not normal in a snake. Okay, so this is what was highlighted in this form. Then for the final moment, for the final sculpture, what I did was I took the slithering movement of the snake, and with wires, I did some doodling and was trying to find what would be the perfect sculpture for it. Okay, so the first two were depicted ferociousness, and the other two depicted slithering movement of the snake. So slithering was kind of elegance and all that shit. So all that thing. So I chose the slithering movement, and then I made this cardboard model, which is kind of abstract, and I did this. Yeah. So yeah, these are the rough sketches I made for the abstract animal, for the snake. So it was kind of a lot of doodling and thinking. And then yeah, these are the cardboard models you can see over here. Again, I chose the slithering movement, you can see over there. And we used MDF sheets, which were kind of hard, and it were 3 mm. Okay, so we used that. We did laser cutting and used it. Then, yeah, the other task for me was how am I gonna show the angles and the joining of the two plates. Okay, so here what I did, I used small copper wire. Okay, you can see over here. I used Fevikwik and I used it and gave this flat looking slab into a 3D angle and elevation, and I made that sculpture. Yeah, this is the final one. This is the top view of the snake, and this is the side view. From top view, we can see it's kind of plain. It looks like it's in one plane. But when you see from the side, you can see there's a little bit of inclination and angle to each and every plate.
Then there was the animal abstraction form. In this case, the same attribute of animal was to be depicted in abstract form. The quick paper exploration was done first. Here you can see it. Then we had to do it in the cardboard. Then the MDF plates were chosen for creating the final abstract animal. So the next exploration in paper I did was using wire and paper, as you can see in the extreme left. Then it went on the cardboard thing, as you can see others. Then I did the final one. It's here. Yeah. So this was my final one, the final product. It's like this. So it just shows the leaping motion of a dolphin without actually showing anything a dolphin resembles by.
We were doing this project in IIT Hyderabad, and it was just 2 days from the convocation, and we decided to use the emotion of aspiration, because students here, aspire for, better life, better education, better future. So we thought we'll build sculptures with aspiration. So the first step involves students selecting a photo of their choice from magazines, old magazines, and pick up that photograph and bring it to the class. From this photograph of, whether it could be the photograph of people celebrating, people looking up for something, it could be any of these things. And from this photograph, the first task is to decipher the grammar of the photograph. In this grammar, we find out what is the primary element which actually brings out this emotion of aspiration. Then we check out what is the secondary element which is supporting this primary element. So after the students actually picked up the grammar was specifically, talking about the primary and the secondary elements, which are the two main elements in the photograph. So then, after working on multiple clay models, the students could come to terms with how the abstraction is working, how the picture is no longer, the component, but it is the clay which is talking about the primary and the secondary elements. So now, once they did the clay models, they had to now come up with one single statement of what the relationship between the primary and the secondary is. Let us go to the students and check up what those relationships were and what are the single sentences.
Primary is pushing down secondary.
That's very interesting. In this case, the primary was pushing down the secondary and actually moving up. What was yours?
In my case, it was the secondary flourishing around the primary to move up.
That's again very interesting. Here in his case, it was flourishing around, so that you'll see how all these things will come up in the sculpture when we show you the actual sculptures. What was yours?
So mine was secondary is pushing primary to move up.
It's very interesting when the primary is pushing the secondary to move up. How are you going to show this push in your sculpture is a very interesting component. And what was yours?
Mine was primary, forcefully moving upwards, supported by the secondary.
That's again very interesting. When you say forcefully, how do you show this forceful in the sculpture is the most interesting part. So taking these single statements, the students then made small cardboard models. Now here we did a very interesting thing. We said we want to use whatever scrap is available, and we looked around and we found this interesting material which earlier student has used to make some furniture, and she had actually drilled holes and created multiple beads out of that, and the beads she used for her furniture, and these planks of wood were available. We said now we'll build the sculpture out of these wooden planks. So here we see these wonderful things being built now, and we will then see how they moved from the cardboard model to the final sculpture. So what I did here was I made groups of 3 to 4 students form a group, and they would combine all the three champion statements they made. So when they combined the statements, the aspirational value became much more higher, and the sculpture became much more intricate and much more beautiful and much more simplistic. So that's how we could complete this assignment from a photograph to a final sculpture, which hopefully IIT Hyderabad will use it during their convocation as props in some very important locations.
The emotive form generation, where we took an emotion and we had a visual support, and then we converted it into a sculpture. So what we chose for the emotion was the aspiration part, aspiration as an emotion. So the image I chose was of a farmer plucking or holding the fruit. So it was like the farmers are supporting for the better future, and the image showed a deep attachment to the better future and supporting and holding it. So in the whole assignment was divided into 4 parts. That's visual material collection and visual grammar and exploration with clay and refinements. So the visual grammar and the explorations that we did covered the most of the part of the assignment. And so the visual grammar was that we had a primary element in that image and the secondary element. So what I chose was the better future, or that the fruit as a stable mass as the primary element, and the holding hands as the secondary element, which is supporting the primary element. So that was my statement for the abstraction of this form. And then the explorations with clay were made so that in both the explorations, the primary element is this, where the bottom or the supporting, the secondary element is supporting. So in from both of these clay explorations, we came to an conclusion that this was better. And what we did was that we clubbed our ideas together. We made groups and we clubbed our ideas together. And 4 of us, me, Saksham, Ayush, and Akansha, formed a group. And then we continued this assignment as a group work. So that will be explained later. And finally, we came to, after more explorations, cardboard prototype, we did the real sculpture with scrap wood material, which was found in our college.
So this was a group assignment that we did, that we initially started by picking out pictures of from magazines. In a picture, we were analyzing the primary element and the secondary element. In my picture, I think I found out that the primary, which are the lights, are highlighted by the secondary. The secondary is pushing the primary and the primary is radiating, which I tried to convert into my clay doodle. And a very quick rough doodle I made, in which I wanted to show radiance. And then we worked as a group together and started making the models. So as a group together, we started making cardboard models by taking everyone's sentences. Mine was radiating up, my another members was pushing upwards. So we started by making this cardboard models initially out of these from references from the clay doodles. We found out that this was very stable. It did not represent the pushing forward part. So we switched it and made some changes to it, in which we wanted to show this upward push and this radiance that is there. And we came up with the final structure, the installation. I understood from this that the scale is very important. What we see on a small cardboard model necessarily won't be represented in the large scale. So we had to make small changes. We had to eliminate the planks that were there, and as well as we understood how it's supposed to be joined. We added small structures to keep the radiating planks in place, as well as adding small triangles for support together. And it also changes the effect of the big scale. When you see a small model and when you see it in a 6 foot tall model, the whole effect of what we want to, the aspiration component of it, it enhances more. So this was a good experience working on a large scale model for the first time.
In terms of aspiration, we were asked to pick a picture which relates to the term aspiration and to create an grammar out of it. And we are like taking a primary element from it and a secondary element from it. And we were like, so here I came up with a sentence of like primary pushing down secondary. And this sentence were used to progress in the next stage of the assignment. Where we were like in a group, and we were 4 people in a group, and we were taken the same sentences, which are for me was pushing down, and the other people were flourishing forcefully, and these to create a sculpture of those feet. So this was our first sculpture. So we made it in like a cardboard, and this was the sculpture.
Yeah. Then comes sculpture of aspiration. Here we had to take a magazine photo and find out the primary element and the secondary element of in the photo. So this was my photo. It was kind of a trees and trunks everywhere. So in this photo, for what I saw, what I observed was the trunk were highlighting, and I chose it as a primary element, and the leaves, which were just covering and flourishing around it, was my secondary observation. So the conclusion, the line which I fixed was the secondary element is flourishing around the primary element to move upwards. You can see these sculptures. This was like the 5-minute doodling with clay we did. So this is the one. Like the primary element is the big one, the trunk I depicted, and the small elements were the leaves, which depicted the secondary element, which were flourishing. And yeah, then the next step was the group project. So 4 of us came together and worked on one single project. Everyone had their own lines and statements, and we had to bring it all together into one sculpture. So yeah, this is the final product where, in my opinion, you can see that these slabs were flourishing around the main element. That was my key part.
Then for the aspiration one, my theme was secondary is supporting the primary to radiate. As you can see in the picture, the secondary being the hands of the lady and the primary being the beauty of the lady. So it's like supporting to radiate the beauty. So in this case, like 3 images were to be collected. This was the final one which I chose. Then exploration in clay, like this was the clay thing I made, depicting the secondary supporting primary to radiate. Then we did some group explorations in cardboard and then group sculptures, which my group will show later on. So this is like the cardboard thing which we came up. The left one is the first ideation, and the final thing we came up with is the right one, as you can see. Thank you.